Let's just take a breath. Let's just take a breath. And let's just do a little fun exercise first. Let's just do a little fun exercise first. Is there something in your life that didn't or isn't turning out the way you expected it to turn out? It could be something little, like picking up the wrong pair of reading glasses, not the ones you cleaned, or it could be something big. But is there something in your life that is not turning out the way your human body, ego, mind has wished it to turn out? Just bring it up. Just bring it up. Just bring it up. And now imagine yourself just breathing in the light that comes to you now. Just imagine yourself being blanketed, almost as if there's a divine source and divine force surrounding you and embracing you. Just imagine yourself being hugged by God. Just imagine Reiki angels just sending you so much love and light in this moment. Just imagine that every breath you breathe in is breathing in the light and the healing and the grace of this moment. Just imagine that that light and that grace and that healing that you breathe in is who and what you really are. Just imagine that that light and that grace and that healing that you breathe in, that is also all around you. Imagine they are one. And imagine your human body, the sheath of separation, disappears. So imagine now that all you are and all you feel is love, light, and grace. And just take a moment to breathe in this experience. Just take a moment to stop everything and give yourself this experience. Just for a moment. Work with the thought form. I am God's love. I am God's light. I am God's grace. And allow God's love, God's light, and God's grace to fill you, to heal you, and to be you. Just breathe this in. Just breathe this in. And now, knowing that you are God's love, God's light, and God's grace, you are in a state of comfort. You are in a state of safety. You are in a state of quietness of mind, clarity of identity, peace, and goodwill. You are in a state of grace. you are in such a state that that thing that disappointed you, or that thing that scares you, or that thing that annoyed you is immaterial in this moment. It has been dissolved by the grace of God. Just allow yourself to be in the state of grace in this holy instant. That can be every holy instant. Just breathe it in and give yourself permission to have this experience. Just breathe it in and give yourself permission to have this experience. And what you experience is a state of forgiveness. It's a state of being that makes the ego's difficulties and fears and illusory false beliefs made manifest. It makes them irrelevant, for you know who you are and whose you are and what you are. And you know that there is a force and a source that is guiding you and supporting you and providing for you. Just come on back now, because I wanted to offer that experience, because one experience is worth 1,000 words. So you're lucky. You get the experience and you get 1,000 words. But what I want to talk about today, is forgiveness offers everything I want. Forgiveness offers everything I want. This is A Course in Miracles, lesson 122. And A Course in Miracles, lesson 122 says, what could you want that forgiveness cannot give? Do you want peace? Forgiveness offers it. Do you want happiness? Forgiveness offers it. Do you want a quiet mind? A certainty of purpose? A sense of worth and a beauty that transcends the world? Forgiveness offers this. Do you want care and safety? Do you want a quietness that cannot be disturbed? A gentleness that can never be hurt? And a deep abiding comfort and a rest so perfect that it cannot ever be upset? Well, forgiveness offers all of this to you and more. Forgiveness offers all of this to you and more. So last week, we learned about how to avoid fake forgiveness and how to use full forgiveness instead. We learned that fake forgiveness just keeps you and the other imprisoned in a pattern and in a relationship of frustration, resentment, and unhappiness. We learned that instead, full forgiveness is not continuing to engage in that pattern, but instead it is an inner state, not something that you do like a verb, I forgive you, which keeps you and the person in that same pattern. Because when you say I am something, you create what that is. So when you say I forgive you, what you were doing is stating, I am in this pattern of resentment and pain. And even though I say I am forgiving you, what I am really doing is perpetuating that pattern. So what we learned is that full forgiveness is an inner state that we attain, just like we did this morning, that makes what happened in the past less relevant, less powerful, and less painful. Because as we've been saying lately, God is like the aspirin that dulls the pain of life. And the more of God we have, the more of the holy sedative we have to bring us the peace and joy that we desire. God is like a happy pill. And so when we are in that inner state of forgiveness, we experience oneness. We experience peace. We experience joy. We experience love. We experience light. We experience placidity. We experience a sense that all is already going to be well, just like that Lizzo song. I know everything's going to be all right. So let's take this a little further. Let's take this a little further and explore how forgiveness can offer us everything we want. So let me ask you this question. What if another way to look at forgiveness was that forgiveness is just being willing to see things differently? What if another way to see full forgiveness is seeing full forgiveness as simply being in that internal state that lets you see things differently? What if another way to understand forgiveness is to understand that forgiveness is the willingness to see things through the eyes of God? So we're going to play a little game now. We're going to play a little game now. What I want you to do is take your thumb and forefinger of your right hand, and I want you to take your thumb and forefinger of your left hand and create a little pyramid, right? See how I'm doing it right here? So you got a little pyramid in between? Okay. Now I want you to take this and move this up so you look through that. Now close one eye and make a note of how it looks. Close one eye and make a note of how it looks, right? Now close the other eye and open one eye and see how it looks. Every time you change which eye you view it from, you see it differently, right? Each time you change which eye you view it from, you see a different scene, don't you? Say yes, I can't hear you, but I can see your hands. You see a different scene each time you change the point of view, right? Well, what if you saw a different scene of your life each time you changed your point of view that same way? What if you changed your point of view from the perspective of the hurt child, the ego, and its fears and biases and doubts and shames and feelings of smallness and feelings of being unloved? What if you change that point of view from the ego to the point of view of the God self that God created you to be? What if you changed your point of view to be in the light of innocence, in the light of peace, in the light of your holiness, in the light of your grace, in the light of your fullness, in the light of your deservingness, in the light of your light and not the shadow of your darkness? Well, if you changed your point of view, you would be in a different state. You would change your state of being. And when you change your state of being, you change your state of allowing. So when you change your state of allowing, you allow something different. You allow all the things that you want, for you turn your eyes away from that which no longer serves you. In other words, you put on God's glasses. And what if it just a simple way of looking at this is forgiveness is simply putting on God's glasses. You saw how your vision shifted when you closed one eye and opened one eye, right? What if you put on God's glasses and God's glasses corrected your vision? There's a lesson in A Course in Miracles that is one of Deb's favorite lessons. That is, truth shall correct all errors in my mind. What if God's glasses corrected all the errors that you saw in your world projected out? And so, when you shift your perception, when you put on God's glasses and see things not in the egoic way, who's a victim, who's the victimizer, who's right, who's wrong, and who is righteous in their disdain and their judgment of the oppressor, and therefore righteous in their resentments. If you change this perspective and you're willing to see things differently, then you can create something different. A Course in Miracles, there's another way of looking at the world. A Course in Miracles lesson 193 says, all things are lessons God would have me learn. And all things that we see right now, that we do not enjoy, that do not bring us joy or peace, they are opportunities to see things differently. They are opportunities to put on God's glasses and to see the love that we missed when our vision was clouded by the ego's misperceptions. You know, when I'm not wearing my glasses, and now even with my contact lenses, when I'm not wearing my glasses, I can't even find the button to go into Zoom. I've got to tell you, it took me forever to get this Zoom call together. And I'm struggling and I'm struggling and I'm struggling. And I'm like, why am I struggling so much? And the answer was simple. I wasn't wearing my glasses. I couldn't find the buttons. Well, guess what? In our lives, we struggle and we struggle and we struggle and we struggle. And you know why? Because we're not wearing our glasses. We're not wearing God's glasses. We're seeing things from the ego. We're seeing things from our perspective of hurt. We're seeing things from our perspective of pain. We're seeing things through the lens of the I am not enough, there is not enough, and therefore I must struggle. We're seeing things through the lens of I am hurting, and therefore I am seeing hurt. We're seeing things through the lens of I am not enough, I am not affirmed, and God doesn't love me, and I am separate from God, so I don't have the help and support I need. We're seeing things through the lens of my heart has been hurt. Let me protect it and run from the love that is waiting to embrace me. It's time for all of us to put on God's glasses instead and see the love that we missed when we were stuck in our ego and its judgments. Now, the overarching lesson here is that love is all there is. And love is who we are. And love is what we are meant to experience in every way that we can experience it. And each situation that we find is an opportunity to see and experience, to enjoy, to be healed by the presence of love that is there all along. Each thing that we find is an opportunity for the presence of love to embrace us and for us to become more aware of it. Whereas anything we're not enjoying is an opportunity for love to shine through. But we have to put on God's glasses. We have to put on God's glasses. Now, you remember from last week of a case study that we talked about was the husband who blew up at his wife, right? The wife just said, turn left here. And all of a sudden, the husband's face contorted in rage. The husband got angry and hostile, and the energy just darkened. And the husband called the wife a name and became verbally abusive just because the wife said, turn left here. And we understood that the husband's response had nothing to do with the wife saying, turn left here. The husband's response was in that moment, he transformed back into a 7-year-old boy whose father told him to go get a tool from the tool shed, and he brought the wrong tool, and his father abused him, and his father berated him, and his father humiliated him, and his father hurt him, and his father terrorized him, and he was reliving that same hurt, that same humiliation, and that same terror, and bleeding all over someone who didn't cut him. Remember that story? Mm-hmm. Well, when we put on God's glasses, we see not that 7-year-old boy acting out. We see that 7-year-old boy acting out, and we give that 7-year-old boy the love that he needs. The wife is no longer the shaming schoolmarm and the target of abuse, but a beloved child of God who is so full of love that wife has enough love within her to see things differently, to see herself differently. I will not be a victim of this anymore. I'm not with this. I'm not having this. And that wife then sees what is really happening. In that moment, the child transformed back into a 7-year-old boy. And there's a cry for love. That 7-year-old boy is crying for love, compassion, for healing, for grace. And that wife has enough love to love that 7-year-old boy. And that wife has enough love to love that 7-year-old boy. So the 7-year-old boy is aware of love's presence to the degree where the 7-year-old boy can love himself. And then the 7-year-old boy can love himself enough to love the wife in return. That's like that Uma song. I'm so glad she's here today. I love myself enough to love you enough that you can love yourself enough that you can love me back. So that's what is needed. That's the cry for love in that scenario that we talked about enough. Let there be enough love in this situation that I am so filled with love, that I have enough love to spare and to share, that I can share some with you so that you can love yourself enough that you can be loved too. And that's any situation. That's not just the 7-year-old boy in the tool shed. That's any situation that we find ourselves in. We can see ourselves differently through the eyes of God. We can put on God's glasses. We no longer have to be the victim. We can put on God's glasses. I love myself to build a boundary. And my boundary says, you're not going to do this to me anymore. I had enough of you. And then we start a new dialogue. Through the eyes of forgiveness as beloved children, we can see it all differently. So how does seeing things through God's glasses affect us walking in the world? How might seeing things through the eyes of forgiveness affect us in the world as we walk it? Well, it affects ourselves. It affects our vision of ourselves. It affects our vision of our world, and it affects our vision of God. And what do I mean when I say, how can we see ourselves through God's glasses? We can see ourselves as holy. We can see ourselves as sinless. We can see ourselves as deserving of joy. We can see ourselves as repositories for God's joy and remember that God's will for us is happiness. We can see ourselves simply as love. Now, how does this affect us in our walk in the world? The way this might affect us in our walk in the world is when someone is throwing shade at us, our default position might have been, what's wrong with me? What if our default position then became, I am love, so there's nothing wrong with me. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with this situation? And the only thing wrong with you, or the only thing wrong with the situation, is love's in need of love. Like that Stevie Wonder song, love's in need of love right here. Send love right away. And so what we do is we go into our higher selves, and what we do is pray. Love's in need of love today. Send love right away. So you go into your higher self and you begin to pray. Love's in need of love today. Send it right away. Go into your higher self and you begin to pray. You don't have to pray by getting on your knees and doing all the hosannas. Just a breath is a prayer. And in that moment you say, let me see me differently. Let me see you differently. Let me see the situation differently. Let me see the love that is needed. Let me be the love that is needed. Let the love that is needed flow. Let the love that is needed heal. And when you see yourself through God's glasses as simply the crystal, the repository, the channel for the infinite love of God, you can bring it to any and every situation. Is anybody with me? I can't hear you, but I can see your hands. Is anybody with me? Love's in need of love today. Love's in need of love in this situation. Send it right away. And in this holy instant, you begin to pray. You begin to pray to see yourself differently. You begin to pray to see where love is needed. You begin to pray to know of love's presence. You begin to pray that love might heal your heart. You begin to pray that love might heal your mind. You begin to pray that love might heal the situation. You begin to pray that you simply are a channel for love, and love flows to you, and love flows through you, and love touches your heart, and love touches their heart, and love touches the situation. And you see it differently. Love's in need of love today. What you do is you begin to pray. And when you cultivate this energy of love, and when you see the world through God's glasses, you cultivate your inner world of love and peace. When you cultivate your inner world of love and peace, you ultimately change your outer world to be a world of love and peace. Let me repeat that. When you cultivate your inner world of love and peace, you ultimately transform your outer world, because your outer world is always simply a reflection of your inner world. And in the meantime, while this is happening, because it takes a while for the earth to catch up with the energy that the elevated energy that you bring, in the meantime, what is happening in the world doesn't affect you as much. Yeah, there's this and there's that and there's this and there's that, but I am in my holiness and I am in my peace, and nothing else will get in the way of my peace. I won't let this disturb my peace, for my peace is the peace that blesses the world. I won't let this disturb my sense of love, for my sense of love is the sense of love that blesses the world. I won't let this upset my sense of balance, because my sense of balance is the balance that blesses the world. Remember, you are a blessing to the world, and the world you see, if it's not the world you want, is the world that you can change by cultivating a different inner world. And God's plans are guaranteed. God's promises are guaranteed, and God's promises are kept. So as you cultivate this inner world, it is inevitable that it shows up in your outer world. Now, the thing I want to reassure you of here in seeing the world through God's glasses is that you're already good at cultivating an inner world. You are an expert at cultivating an inner world. You are a master at cultivating an inner world. And you don't even know it. So let me ask you a question. How many of you have ever created a scenario in your mind and played it out? Anybody ever, you're getting ready to have a confrontation with somebody, right? Anybody ever get ready to have a confrontation with somebody and they practice what they're going to say and they envision the scenario and they visualize the scenario and they put themselves in the scenario, and you put yourself into the scenario to such a degree that quantum scientists say when you imagine something, you do so with up to 80% of the intensity of the actual situation. So your blood already starts to boil, right? You already start to cultivate an energy of anger, right? You already start to create an energy of conflict, right? You already are in your doubtful self. You already are in your resentful self. You already are in your small self, right? You created that. What if you could cultivate an inner consciousness of inner peace instead? What if you were to cultivate an inner consciousness of yourself as the beloved, innocent, holy, perfect, and deserving of something much better than this instead? What if you could cultivate an inner world of joy and fulfillment instead? I could see peace instead of this, says one of the lessons in A Course in Miracles. And you can. So when you see the world through God's glasses, you see a world of love, and you create that and cultivate that within, and it is guaranteed to be shown to you without eventually. And in the meantime, the world outside of you doesn't affect you so much. You no longer put yourself in the fear and terror because you've cultivated a different inner consciousness. And when you see the world through God's glasses, you see that God is with you. When you see the world through God's glasses, you see that God is within you. When you see the world through God's glasses, you see that God has never left you, and you've never been the prodigal child, and you've never been the child banished from the kingdom of heaven. You see that you have always been innocent. There is no sin. It has no consequences. You see that you have always been perfect. You are perfect for God's purpose, uniquely designed, uniquely created with your unique experiences, that you might be the light unto the world, uniquely for those lights just like you who are waiting to see your light, that they might have permission to turn on their lights. So how can we make this work and let forgiveness offer us everything we want in practical ways? So let's work with a couple of practical examples of seeing yourself through God's glasses, seeing the world through God's glasses, and seeing God through God's glasses. In other words, seeing the world through the eyes of forgiveness, seeing yourself through the eyes of forgiveness, and seeing God through the eyes of forgiveness, so that forgiveness can offer you everything you want. How can we do this? Let's look at some practical examples. Well, I'm drawn to a story that a friend told years ago when they were having a fight with someone in their office. The fight was about that other person not doing what they were supposed to do and the project being in jeopardy as a result. And the other person reacted resentfully, defensively, and started attacking as well. So way that they were in this attack and defend dyad that clearly was unproductive. Has anyone here ever been in an attack and defend dyad that was clearly unproductive and not known how to get out of it? Amen? Where that attack and defend energy just escalated on itself until it exploded. Amen? All right. Well, all of a sudden, she remembered her Course in Miracles stuff. It's like, all of a sudden, something creeped into the back of her mind. Then it crawled over the back of her head. Then it went down into the top of her head, and she had oh, I learned a lesson from A Course in Miracles that could apply to this. And all of a sudden, she realized that this person was hurting, and that hurt people, and that this person wasn't who she was seeing. This person was seeing the shamed child within the person. And what do we do when we see a child that's hurt? We comfort them. So all of a sudden, she remembered she was a goddess. All of a sudden, she remembered she was goddess. All of a sudden, she remembered she was goddess, and the light and love and the grace of God that she had cultivated in all those morning meditations started coming through her, started addressing the other person. She didn't say a word. She stopped giving that back and forth to escalate the situation. She just sent the other person love. And suddenly the energy started shifting. Suddenly the dialogue started shifting. And suddenly the results started shifting. And the peace she saw, instead of that conflict, was apparent. And you know what that person did? That person went back to their desk, completed the project, and they had success. Forgiveness offers everything I want. Forgiveness, seeing things through the eyes of God, seeing things with God's glasses, will heal a situation. Forgiveness, seeing things through the eyes of God, will give us peace. Forgiveness, seeing things using God's glasses, will give us happiness. Forgiveness, seeing things through God's glasses, will give us that quiet mind, that certainty of purpose, that life of care and safety. For God is a loving, healing presence that always reassures us, that always has enough, that always is of unconditional love. And that unconditional love lifts from us any doubts, any fears, any shames, any feelings of inadequacy. So our task and my ask is, will you see yourself through God's glasses as beloved, as holy, as innocent and perfect, as powerful and pure, as deserving, as lovable, as love-able? Will you see yourself through God's glasses? Will you see the world through God's glasses, through the eyes of forgiveness? Will you see the world not as this wicked, hostile place, which is the playground of all of our collective savage fantasies, but will you instead cultivate an inner world of peace and joy and beauty and love and harmony that inevitably is projected into the outer world? And will you see God as yourself in the mirror through God's glasses? Will you see God as present within you through God's glasses? Will you see God as present around you with God's glasses? Will you see God as everything that was created for your good, that you might have the peace and joy and the happiness God wills for you through God's glasses? As you choose to see the world through God's glasses, and this is what I ask of you, what you get is the peace, the happiness, the joy, the comfort, the grace, the resolution, the ease, and the fulfillment that you desire with God. So forgiveness, another way of saying forgiveness is seeing things differently, seeing things with God's glasses, can give you everything you want. And if you see through God's glasses, you will receive all that you want. That's what I ask of you today. And that's what I want to share with you today. So I want to thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Everyone have a wonderful day.